When my heart is weary, when my soul is weak, when it seems I can't traverse the trail before me, I survey the glory of your agony, and I find the will to fight for what's before me. 'Cause you ran the race, enduring for your glory, and I fix my eyes on you, the founder and the finisher of our faith. And I fix my eyes on you, the solace in your suffering is my strength. As I fight to follow, you're my righteous guide, and you train me to delight in all that's holy. Heal my broken body, cure my crooked stride, throw off every weight and sin that clings so closely. I will run the race, enduring for your glory, and I fix my eyes on you, the founder and the finisher of our faith. I fix my eyes on you, the solace in your suffering is my strength. You held me the only life I need. You help me breathe. You're the only life I need. You die for me. You're the only life I need. So I fix my eyes on you, the founder and the finisher of our faith. I fix my eyes on you. The solace in your suffering is my strength.
Have you seen the videos where celebrities read the mean things that people tweet about them? They're awful. I don't recommend you look them up. The language is inappropriate. The things people say are just relentlessly mean. And oftentimes it's over the way someone looks, or an acting choice they made, or an opinion they've shared online, or rumors about who they're dating. Mostly inconsequential things. And the internet can be really mean about those kind of things. But sometimes the internet is brutal for other reasons. Sometimes a video turns up of someone who committed an injustice, and we only are able to see it because someone shared on social media, or someone shares on one of their social media platforms something that's completely dehumanizing, that's awful, and it gets shared that they did this inappropriate thing online. And this brings up questions of justice. You know, what's the right way to handle this? How do you right a wrong in a social media culture? Is it enough to say this is wrong, or are there other steps that need to be taken? Justice can be complicated. We started a series last week called More Than a Hashtag, and in this series, we began exploring what it looks like for Christians, for followers of Jesus, to pursue justice. We looked at Micah chapter 6, and Micah is a prophet in the Old Testament who's wrestling with the question, what does God really want from people? And Micah asked the question, does God want religious experiences and practices from people? Is that all that God requires? And Micah says, no. What God actually wants is that we act justly, that we love mercy, and we walk humbly with God. Today we're going to look at two words from Micah chapter 6, verse 8. Love mercy. What is mercy? Mercy is compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it's within one's power to punish or harm. In other words, if because of your situation or privilege, you're able to harm someone and you choose not to, or someone does something wrong and you are in a position to punish them and you choose not to, this is mercy. And sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that justice and mercy are opposites, that they can't coexist. But following God means that we live out both justice and mercy. Next week, we're going to take a closer look at what justice is. What is it we really mean when we talk about justice? But today, we just need to know that justice and mercy can go together, and that God calls us to do both. For our purposes, we're going to say that mercy is not getting what we deserve. When we deserve punishment and we don't get that, that's what mercy is. And we all love receiving mercy. If you've ever stepped out of line or broken a rule in class or at home, and a parent or teacher says, you know what, we're going to talk about this, but we're not going to give you the punishment you deserve. Everyone loves that kind of mercy. We all like being on the receiving end of mercy. But loving mercy requires not just that we like receiving mercy, but that we also love offering mercy, that we give mercy to other people. When I think about what it looks like to live out mercy, I realize that Jesus perfectly embodies mercy. One of my favorite stories about Jesus comes from Luke chapter 7. In Luke chapter 7, Jesus gets invited to have a dinner party with Simon, who's a Pharisee. And this happens pretty often in Jesus' life. He gets invited to these social gatherings with religious people. But there was a woman in the town who had a bad reputation. She was considered an immoral woman. And she heard that Jesus was going to be there. And so she decides that even though she's not invited, in this culture, men and women didn't interact this way socially. And she wouldn't have been the kind of woman that would have been invited to a party anyway. But she's going to show up. So she shows up with an alabaster jar of expensive perfume. And she comes at Jesus' feet and she's just moved emotionally. She weeps at his feet. The tears are so immense that she's able to wash his feet with them. She uses her hair as a towel and she wipes his feet down. She anoints his feet with the perfume. And all the crowd starts looking. And Simon, who hosted the party, said, man, if Jesus was really a prophet, he would know what kind of woman this was and he wouldn't let her touch him because she's a sinner. Jesus answers his thoughts. He says to Simon, I have something to say to you. And he proceeds to tell a story about a man who loaned money to two different people, two different sums of money, 500 to one and 50 to another. And he ended up forgiving the debt because neither one of them could pay it back. And so he asked Simon, after telling this story, who do you suppose loved him more after that? Is it the one who had the smaller debt or the larger debt forgiven? Well, obviously, it was the one who had given the larger debt and it was canceled. And so that's what Simon says. So then Jesus turns to the woman, but he speaks to Simon. And this is what he says. Look at this woman kneeling here. I love that the first thing Jesus does is acknowledge this woman, her presence, her humanity, her dignity. He makes Simon look her in the eyes. He says, look at this woman kneeling here. When I entered your home, you didn't offer me water to wash the dust from my feet, but she has washed them with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You didn't greet me with a kiss, but from the time I first came in, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You neglected the courtesy of olive oil to anoint my head, but she has anointed my feet with rare perfume. I tell you, her sins, and they are many, have been forgiven. So she has shown me much love. But a person who is forgiven little shows little love. Jesus then said to the woman, your sins are forgiven. See, if anyone had a right to hold this woman's sins against her, it was Jesus. But he chose to offer compassion and forgiveness because Jesus completely embodied mercy. I assume that this is why the woman showed up, because she understood exactly who Jesus was. To Simon, Jesus was just some other religious teacher that it would make him more popular by having him at his house. But to this woman, Jesus was a source of mercy. He was welcoming and kind and gracious and forgiving when that's exactly what she needed. See, sometimes we get frustrated with other people and we want them to be brought to justice right this moment. And there's a time for justice. When someone is harmed, when there's a system of oppression that exists, justice needs to come. And there needs to be natural consequences to our decisions because oftentimes that's what brings about real change. But what we need to realize is that as followers of Jesus, we need to offer justice to the world, but also mercy to people. Experiences the consequences of our sin is a necessary step in the justice process. But aren't you glad that Jesus was a source of mercy? For a few moments, here's what I want you to consider. Have you ever needed to be forgiven of much? Has there ever been a time in your life where you've really messed up and you needed forgiveness? Well, the reality is Jesus offered that forgiveness because Jesus embodies mercy. Jesus is the ultimate source of the forgiveness that you needed in that moment and that you continue to need because of those choices. Have you ever allowed the forgiveness you've received to change you? See, if you're the kind of person who's holding onto grudges and letting the resentment build up and constantly demanding other people conform to what you want, then the mercy you've received hasn't changed you. It hasn't transformed you. Have you ever refused to show mercy to someone else? As a Christ follower, we're told to love mercy. One of the things that maybe you need to process today is, has anyone hurt you recently? You might need to show them mercy instead of taking revenge. Because following Jesus, being in love with God, pursuing justice in the world, requires that we love mercy. Each week during this series, we're giving you an action point. And this week, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get more educated about one justice issue. This means that you're going to need to do a little bit of work. Luckily for us, it's summer, school is done, and I'm asking you to find some resources. Maybe it's a book, podcast, a TED Talk, something on the topic of justice. You can maybe follow someone who's prominent on the issue, who speaks out on social media, and gain insight from them. But look for experts or insiders who are directly affected by this issue of injustice. And what we're talking about is breaking the cycle. Because when we become more educated about it, it's a step in the process of breaking the cycles of injustice that exist in our world. So your action step this week is to learn.
I've been anxious, I can't sleep. Worthless worries burning me. I heard the sun chase the wind till my tired spirit spins into the ground. When I try to take control, fear and terror grip my soul. I need joy, I need peace, I need rest, I need relief. I look to you and you teach me to seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. Seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. I will seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. Seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. See the ravens, they can farm. They don't have silos, trucks or barns. But our God sees their needs, and He loves them, and He feeds them every day. See the lilies, how they grow. They don't work or buy their clothes, but if God, by His grace, clothes the grass with great array, then how much more is there in store? When I seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. 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 Oh, I will seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. Seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. I will seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. Seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. Oh, I will seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. Seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness.
When we think about what it means to practice mercy or love mercy in our current context, in the current cultural climate, a couple things to keep in mind. Hopefully this last week you listened to someone else's story, and this week we've asked you to learn, to educate yourself on issues of justice. And as you do these things, a sense of mercy should develop inside of you, compassion and empathy toward the people you're learning about. It should drive you to be more respectful toward them, to honor their story, but also to be motivated for compassion, toward compassion in how you can better understand their situation. Oftentimes, when we see people respond to injustice, we get as angry or even angrier at the way they respond to injustice. But if you have a sense of compassion, of mercy toward other people, and you've listened to their stories and you actually understand what's going on in their heart and their mind when they're experiencing everyday life and when they're experiencing the oppression and the injustice, it should challenge some of your notions about what it means to be a Christ follower and how you can love them as yourself, like Jesus commanded us to do. And so when you think about listening and learning from other people, when you think about loving mercy in this moment, what it means is that you need to slow yourself down and not rush to judgment on other people. And you need to make sure that you're being as merciful to other people who are different than you, that you may not understand, who don't come from the same background as you, who have different skin color than you, who have grown up under different circumstances than you, as you can be, because Jesus embodied mercy and he's calling us to embody mercy in this moment.